The story of Esther, a tale of courage, faith, and destiny. In the opulent heart of the Persian Empire, the mighty king, Xerxes, I ruled with unparalleled power. His kingdom stretched from India to Ethiopia, a vast realm of wealth and influence. Yet, within the walls of his grand palace in Susa, a series of events would unfold that would change the course of history and the fate of an entire people. The story begins with Queen Vashti, the first wife of King Xerxes. Renowned for her beauty, Vashti held a position of great esteem. However, her fall from grace was as swift as it was tragic. During a lavish feast, after days of revelry and drunkenness, King Xerxes, in a display of his might and wealth, commanded Vashti to appear before his guests, wearing her royal crown. But this was not merely a request to display her beauty. It was a demand for her to present herself before a crowd of inebriated men, a public humiliation that Vashti, in her dignity and pride, refused to endure. Her refusal was a bold act of defiance against the king's authority, and it sent shockwaves through the court. Furious at her disobedience, Xerxes consulted with his advisors, who warned that Vashti's defiance would inspire other women to disobey their husbands. To prevent such an uprising, they advised the king to dethrone Vashti and banish her from the palace forever. In his anger, Xerxes followed their counsel, casting Vashti out and issuing a decree that she would never again enter his presence. This decree, spread throughout the empire, would set the stage for the rise of a new queen, a queen who would save a nation. After Vashti's departure, a search began for a new queen. The king's men scoured the empire, seeking the most beautiful young women to be brought to the palace. Among them was Esther, a young Jewish girl living in exile, raised by her cousin Mordecai after the death of her parents. Esther, also known as Hadassah, was not only beautiful but also kind and wise. She was taken to the palace, where she quickly gained favor in the eyes of Haggai, the king's eunuch in charge of the harem, who provided her with special beauty treatments and the best accommodations. When Esther was presented to King Xerxes, her grace and beauty captivated him, and he placed the royal crown on her head, making her queen in place of Vashti. But despite her new position, Esther kept her Jewish identity a secret, as Mordecai had advised. Her true test of courage, however, was yet to come. While Esther settled into her life as queen, a dark plot was brewing within the kingdom. Haman, the king's chief advisor, was a man consumed by pride and ambition. He expected all in the kingdom to bow before him. But Mordecai, Esther's cousin, refused to do so, for he would bow to no one but God. Haman's hatred for Mordecai grew into a desire to destroy not just him, but all the Jewish people in the empire. Haman devised a sinister plan, manipulating King Xerxes into signing a decree that would lead to the extermination of the Jews. The decree was sealed with the king's signet ring, setting a date for the massacre. Mordecai, upon learning of this, was devastated. He tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and wept bitterly outside the palace gates. News of Mordecai's mourning reached Esther, and through a messenger Mordecai urged her to go to the king and plead for her people's lives. But approaching the king unsummoned was a perilous act, punishable by death unless the king extended his golden scepter. Esther was terrified, knowing the risks, but Mordecai's words resonated deeply with her. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this? Summoning all her courage, Esther resolved to act. She fasted and prayed for 3 days, instructing all the Jews in Susa to do the same. On the third day, Esther dressed in her royal robes and approached the king. As she stood in the inner court, her heart pounded. But Xerxes, seeing her, extended his golden scepter, sparing her life. With grace and wisdom, Esther invited the king and Haman to a banquet, where she would reveal her request. At the banquet, Xerxes, intrigued by Esther's request, offered her anything she desired, up to half his kingdom. But Esther, sensing the timing wasn't right, invited them to another banquet the following day. Haman, meanwhile, left the first banquet elated, but his mood darkened when he saw Mordecai, who still refused to bow. In a fit of rage, Haman ordered a gallows to be built, intending to hang Mordecai the next morning. That night, however, the king couldn't sleep. He ordered the royal chronicles to be read to him, and was reminded of how Mordecai had once saved his life by uncovering a plot to assassinate him. Xerxes asked how Mordecai had been rewarded for this, and when he learned that nothing had been done, he decided to honor him. The next morning, just as Haman arrived to request Mordecai's execution, the king asked Haman how the king should honor a man he delights in. Believing the king intended to honor him, Haman suggested a grand parade with royal robes and a royal horse. To his horror, the king commanded Haman to do all this for Mordecai. Haman, humiliated, was forced to lead Mordecai through the streets of Susa, proclaiming his honor. After this, Haman rushed to Esther's second banquet, where the moment of truth arrived. With courage, Esther revealed her Jewish heritage and exposed Haman's plot to annihilate her people. Xerxes, enraged, ordered Haman to be hanged on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. But the king's decree, once signed, could not be revoked. So, Xerxes issued a new decree, allowing the Jews to defend themselves against their enemies. On the appointed day, the Jews fought back and triumphed over those who sought to destroy them. The Jewish people were saved, and the day intended for their destruction became a day of victory and joy. The festival of Purim was established to commemorate this miraculous deliverance, a celebration of courage, faith, and divine providence. Esther's story is one of destiny fulfilled, of a woman who risked everything to save her people. Her legacy lives on as a testament to the power of faith, courage, and the belief that even in the darkest of times, one voice, one action can change the course of history.